Howdy once again, it's Tubalcain, your YouTube shop teacher. Now, I recently acquired from a friend by the name of Frank this pull gear speed reducer for a drill press, and I've talked about that in a temporary video, which may not even be on now as you watch this particular video, but the whole idea in that video was to ask for help on how to disassemble this, because it appears to be all press fitted together on assembly. Now, if you're not familiar with what a pull gear is, pause your video and read this, because this is a speed reducer. I've often lamented the fact that my drill presses have too fast of a slow speed. So this is a 1:7 ratio, and you can find through links all of the various pattern drawings. So I submitted this pattern drawing on that video that I just talked about, and there was a consensus by people, some far out suggestions too, but the consensus was to press this out, and then the whole thing will separate right here, so that this bearing here pressed into this shaft, although it's a hollow shaft, is what's holding the thing together. There are no other external fasteners or any other particular way to get it apart. Now, just about everybody, and this is really beat up, you know, is it worth salvaging and spending the time on? Well, I don't know, but it definitely is not operable the way it is, because the bearings are bad. It does make noise. Maybe there's bad gears. This is a planetary system, but at least it'll be interesting to take it apart and examine it, even if I never do get it to be operable. Now, these were made in the 50s and 60s, and then the man died in the mid-60s, so that's probably when they stopped making them. They were really way too expensive for the average homeowner to buy. Let's see if I got the prices here someplace. Thought I had the prices. Yeah, here they are. So in the mid-50s, and the patent was 1956, it was $69, which would be equal to $400. So you're just not going to sell very many of them because of that. And it can be engaged and disengaged with this little crank here on the bottom, on the top. And there's a couple of oilers there. It's very compact where the actual gears are, just in this section right here. Step pulleys, and this was available in a B size pulley as well, but there would only been 2 steps. This is A size, which is 1/2 inch wide. Also, in some of the things that I printed out here, here's another view from the patent, and look up the patent, you'll find it most interesting. A lot of people already have, but in order for it to operate, there was this accessory here that clamped around the column of the drill press with a pin that would move in and out and would hold the unit stationary. This is out of proportion here, but the pin went into that little hole, which in fact is this big hole, which is even broken out. So that was just to keep it from spinning when you were using it as a gear reducer. Also, then you could undo it and you'd have your regular motor speed back. Within 30 minutes after I put that original video on, my neighbor knocked at my door. Well, let me tell you the knocking story. About a week ago, there was a knock at the back door, and it was my friend Frank, and he just said, well, I know you were interested in these. You mentioned it in a video, so here I have one, but it's pretty beat up. It's the way I found it. I did not do all this damage, he said, and I'm sure he didn't. And I think people tried to get this apart. But anyway, after the video, I get a knock at the back door, and it's my neighbor who's a gunsmith, and he came over. He had immediately seen the video and wanted to talk about it. So we bantered with that back and forth on what to do. And we pretty much agreed about the pressing out, which was the same thing that people are saying in the plea for help video. Now, people were most concerned about this set screw. And so was I, because the very first thing that I did within a half hour after Frank gave this to me was to attempt to back that set screw out, but it would not come out. So this morning I decided, well, let's just do or die. So I took a brand new Allen wrench that was not rounded, and I worked it back and forth. And, you know, you get that feeling that at some point it's going to strip. Well, I thought I got nothing to lose, so I stripped it out, and it's rounded out. So the very first thing I'm going to do is take this to the milling machine and drill out with carbide drill bit, the set screw, so there's no interference as I attempt to do the pressing. So join me in this rather lengthy video, or might even be a two-part video, I don't know yet. And we'll see if I can get this thing apart by all of the great suggestions that you people sent in. And go back and look at that video if it's still available, because some of the comments are really wonderful, and I appreciate it as well. So let's step over to the milling machine and I'll show you how I'm going to set this up. Here I am in the Bridgeport, and the lower bearing here is held in the vise. Now I put this angle plate up here just to hold it in so it can't move out on me. And then let's look at it from the other direction as well. Looking at it from this direction, I simply put a drill bit in this set screw hole down to the set screw, just so that I could determine that it's pretty well vertical just by eyeballing it. And then I will put, this is eighth inch rather. I would like it if I had a larger bit, but I like a lot of things. That's an 1/8 inch carbide bit, so I'm going to drill through it, I hope. Seems to be a good one. And then, for lack of anything better, I'm going to use this carbide 1/4 inch end mill and plunge it, and hopefully remove the entire set screw. That's the game plan. We'll see how it works. Well, here we go. We're going to give it a try. I hope I don't hear the dreaded snap. Alright, I'm through with the 1/8 inch carbide. Let's try it now with the end mill. Now I always preach not to hold an end mill in a drill chuck, but I'm going to do it anyway because there's no side pressure on it. It's the side pressure of milling that causes that Jacob's taper to come loose. And now the end mill, and I'm forced to hold this this mill much more toward the end here than what I want to, but I need the reach. It's not that long of an end mill, so let's see what happens. I did use a little oil. You see, I'm almost touching with the chuck jaws right here. I believe I'm all the way through. I'm going to check it with a flashlight through the bore. Success. Those carbide cutters were great, and that was the last of the set screw there. Just a little bit of thread that got pushed out. So I will deburr it a little bit in there. I don't know if it's necessary, but there's the hole there. And it looks pretty clean on this side, so, and I did no damage. You may have noticed from my tone that at any given moment I am ready to give this up, because at the age of 74 a fella has an awful lot of quit in him. And I'm no exception, and of course if I quit you'll never see this video, so maybe the point is moot. Well, next I'm going to tackle the actual pressing job. Now, I do not own a press, or it's a relatively small press, and I think it's 1 ton, but it's inconvenient, and I really would need some way to hold this properly. Now, my neighbor, who was over here the other day, has a press, and we'll get it out, and we might go that route. But let me try this first. So I went out in the garage, and I dug through. I have a lot of pullers. And somebody recommended a bearing separator, and this is my larger one. It's an OTC. There's one that's a little smaller. This might do, but I was very much interested in having a fork here that would conform to the angle of the V pulley, so I don't mangle that, because this appears to be the only good groove that's left. But looking at this OTC, and you can see that these jaws are in fact tapered. Now, it wouldn't be the same taper as this, I mean, come on. But, all right, let me take that. These bolts are bent. Let me take it apart and slip it on there. This may be a match made in heaven. I'm not sure yet. But let me put those nuts on there. I don't have any bench room at all because I have interrupted other videos where I'm working still on the Lyle drill grinder, getting ready for the video that will in fact be on how to use this, how to sharpen drills. So you can see I got drill bits sitting everywhere here that I'm fiddling around with, so that's a little bit off topic. But let me go ahead and get those nuts on there. I might need some washer. I'm not sure what I need yet. But the principle here is that I'm going to take these are 3/8 bolts, and these are 3/8 coarse threaded holes, and then using this snap-on puller. You know, I have very few snap-on tools, but this is a snap-on. But the idea here is to press that through. I mean, you might think I'm pulling, but I guess I'm pressing. But I do have to stop and make, after I eat lunch here, a pilot that will have a step on it and a center hole that will fit the end of this puller. So I'll be back in a little while after I eat, and I'm in a better mood, and after I have that pilot made. I'm not sure how long it needs to be. It's not too critical though. See you in a few minutes. Alright, I made a pilot here that's just a little bit less than 3/4 right there, a little less than an inch there. I didn't know what length to make it, so I might have to make another one that's longer, I don't know, or push against this. Big center hole, and let's see, what else here that will fit the end of this. So let me go ahead and assemble this, and let's see what happens. Let's take a look at the setup now. There's the bearing separator, the puller, and the shaft here, whatever you want to call it. Got a little oil on the tip here. So I'm ready to do or die here. Whether that wrench is long enough, I don't know. That's so beat up that won't go on there. I'll have to use the open end. I might have to grind that off a little bit. And I'll use another bar in here to counteract the force. I think I'll do that down on the floor. Pray for me. Here we go. Nothing happening yet. Well, it is moving. You can see where this fairly thick rule now will go into the groove. So I'm going to continue working on it after I get my breath. getting easier. Oh, the sweet smell of success. Now, thank you very much to all of you that gave the correct answer, and that was either using a press or a puller. In essence, I was doing the same thing with the puller that a press does. The other way would have worked fine too. So I got it apart, and that's going to be really the conclusion of this video here as I summarize this, because in fact, I'll make another video, and that will be the rebuilding of it, I hope. This bearing is definitely bad. Terrible. Terrible bearing. This bearing also, I can feel is real bad. According to the drawings, this at one time had a shield on it, and someone mutilated that when they did the rest of the mutilation here. I did not appear to do any damage here where the bearing separator was. Oh yeah, there's a little scuffing there that can be cleaned up on the lathe later. The ring gear looks good. I don't see anything wrong with it. I don't see any damage to the planetary gears. So I think we have a viable, good unit here. This is the hole that I drilled out, of course, for that set screw. So I need to remove this bearing, order bearings, as there are apparently three different size bearings. Pull this bearing, find the number off the other side, and pull this bearing, get the numbers off of it. And then there is yet a third bearing, I thought. I think there's still a bearing down in there. So I got a little more disassembly to do, but the riddle has been solved. You can see how intricate this is, and the fact that there's extra gears here, that is, usually you just see 3 typically, but here you're seeing 4, because if I have this correct, that 2 of the gears, the purpose is just to reverse the direction. Otherwise you'd have to reverse the direction of the motor, the rotation of the motor, to get the correct rotation of the spindle. But the root problem with this device is the bearings, because that bearing is just horrible. Not frozen up, but it's just terrible. And this bearing is terrible, and probably the other one. But for those of you that had the wrong answer, you know, and some of you thought there was something hidden under the oilers, or that we had to approach it from this end, but they were all good guesses. I think that was a fun exercise for some of you to go through that and study that drawing. I hope more people do, because it's interesting to look at those old patent drawings. You can see that there are just a few minor differences from the drawing to the final product here. Notice that in some of the information that the people gave me, it was clearly stamped here with the name and the manufacturer and the city and all of that, but not on this one. Perhaps this was an earlier one before they had even purchased the stamps to stamp that properly. But it's interesting. I assume that this collar has to come off. I'll use a puller on that as well. This is what I used to push. That worked perfectly. That worked perfectly. Now it'll be easy to remove that bearing. That can be driven out rather than pulled out. Or it could be, yeah, I'll drive that out with a brass punch from the inside. Now all of that will be shown in the follow-up video, which I think then will just be a 2-part video. Some people suggested that I make an entirely new piece here, which I have no intentions of doing. It's still pretty intricate. Some suggested that any high school kid could make this. No. I taught high school. No. They could not make it, even if you purchased the gears. Most of the high school teachers couldn't make it, and I may be one of them. But, you know, I had fun doing this. I had great fear and trepidation as I started applying pressure. And I thought, well, something else might give. I might be destroying it. And then, of course, you wouldn't have seen this video. But do follow me on Instagram. Do subscribe to my channel if you like this kind of stuff. And hopefully this will be mounted on one of my drill presses eventually. Follow me on Instagram. And subscribe. And give me a thumbs up if I deserve it. And if it's a thumbs down, give it to Adam. All right. Thank you all out there for watching me and tolerating my excess verbiage. See you in the next video.